Hey crypto bros, hope you guys are having a great day. We're going to be talking about regulation because things are moving in regards to the Asian countries. We're going to be talking about overall the DXY, where we could be heading on the macro scale. I think a lot of people overall are misunderstanding the key pivotal role that the US dollar is playing on the DXY and why you need to keep an eye on it. We'll talk about other things like Zen, Pulsechain, and Pulsechain. So let's cover the news right here. So CCTV, China Central Television, just broadcasted crypto. So this tweet came out from CZ Binance. He's saying that this is a big deal overall because it's starting to create some buzz around crypto. Now, we've seen in the past, China has been very negative overall to the crypto space, where they've actually banned mining and mining hardware. So this is actually in a positive note where they're starting to talk about crypto overall. However, it isn't without regulation, because we're seeing the Hong Kong SFCC provide a detailed regulatory compliance that is needed in order for us to continue operating within the jurisdictions of the SFC, which is similar to the SEC in the United States. So this one is saying there is no stable coins allowed, of course, because they want to run their own CBDC platforms to the masses. So they're going to be ruling that out. We know the consequences of CBDC, bringing in more control, totalitarian system type deal. And do you really want to be using some sort of tool that allows you to track you all the time? They're saying there is no earning, deposit taking, and lending and borrowing, which kind of negates the whole purpose at the end of the day of what crypto is actually about. So again, kind of defeating a little bit of the DeFi purposes, and that there's a travel rule in place. Now, if you go to this article, it basically lists out a little bit more details, which I'm not going to go over. However, some key critical things in regards to the travel rule: it also prevents the process of virtual asset transfers for illicit actors and design parties, and detects such transfers when they occur. So again, it's basically a full-blown tracking system. They want you to be using CBDC, so they're going to allow these blockchains to basically live within under the rules of their guidelines or restrictions. But what we're going to want to see here is that this is defeating the whole purpose of Bitcoin, defeating the whole purpose of what crypto is meant for, that anybody can come in, have financial inclusion, and use any of these products and services that DeFi essentially offers. So I don't like the ability that they're basically masking onto this and making it their own. But this is overall in a good positive note that they are letting loose a little bit in regards to crypto. But let's see how this actually plays out on the bigger picture. Let's go ahead and move on to something I want to discuss in particular. So this is the DXY chart on the monthly time span. So a lot of people throw out the idea of de-dollarization. It's an idea that the dollar is going to collapse due to inflation and due to other countries essentially dropping the dollar as the world reserve currency. So you can't actually speak in regards to those terms without looking at the DXY. So the DXY is basically a basket of currencies against the US dollar, and we compare how strong the US dollar is to those other particular forex currencies. So now if we look at the monthly chart, guys, okay, we zoom out, we always look at the monthly chart. It gives us a good idea of what's happening. So now there is enough data going back till 1967. So very, very long time in terms of this particular chart. So if we were to count our basic tops, so we can see here, look, there was a top right here. So this was also a top as well too. And some people are basically calling this as a top as well too. Now, the other things that you can actually do is you can draw a trend line from the top of this going all the way back, again, historical levels of 1984. And then you had your other top as well too, you can say right here, which is around, again, 2001, it looks like 2001 to 2002. And then drawing that trend line all the way to the bottom of this. Now you can see that we broke out of this actual particular trend line, historical trend line, and then we came back, retested this area around 2018, and then we bounced off of it and gathering a little bit more assurance. And then you can see here there was a bit of a support structure for us as well too. So as you can see here, it grabbed a bit of a support structure for it to break a lot higher, which it did in this case. Now we're coming to a key pivotal point to indicate whether or not this is a basic top here. Now, there is something I do also want to note, because a lot of people have been saying that the dollar is basically weakening against all other currencies. And that's not the case, because we can see that the dollar has been in an actual uptrend. Because if you were to grab your trend line going all the way to the top of this, right, you've been putting in higher highs and higher lows, which basically gives you an indication that you're in an uptrend. Now, you haven't been in an uptrend, again, coming in all the way back from 2008, guys. So this in particular is pretty huge. So a lot of people have saying that the dollar is actually weakening, but the dollar is not actually weakening. It's just there is more of that supply coming out. When the Fed comes out and they start printing, they're basically printing more, and there's more of that supply coming in. But what people don't actually realize is that when the dollar gains strength in the DXY, what tends to happen is that other countries feel the dominance of the dollar, because they have to go out and buy US dollars, because the US dollar is the world reserve currency. They're basically printing more money. This also causes another issue for other countries to meet the supply and demand aspect of it. Now, what we see in regards to this is that we've been in an uptrend since 2008, and now we came to a pivotal role overall around September of 2022, and we started having this downtrending move. Now, if the DXY continues to fall below and come down to this trend line, this is going to actually spell very well overall for risk on assets. And when the DXY doesn't do too well, risk on assets like Bitcoin, gold, and equities, even in some cases, do pretty well. However, when the DXY gains very strong momentum to the upside and continues to go up, usually risk on assets don't do so well overall. But what we've seen, the reason I am bringing this up to your attention, is that Bitcoin actually came out around the 2008 to 2009. Bitcoin has actually gained so much strength, even though the DXY has been gaining dominance over other currencies. So this is something that's good overall for the narrative of Bitcoin, is that even though the DXY is gaining strength, Bitcoin is also doing pretty well. Now, because Bitcoin hasn't seen high interest rate hikes, and being in an environment that we've been in right now, you could say, look, this is the first time that Bitcoin is going to be truly tested when that printer completely has been turned off. However, in the long run, the big macro picture still stays the same, because what we're seeing is that a lot of countries are trying to move away from the United States dollar. Now, when I say trying, they're actually trying. They're not completely dropping the US dollar. Now we're seeing the BRICS come out and transact in their local currencies. However, for services and goods and the world reserve currency, they still need US dollars. So the US dollar in particular isn't going to be dropped as a world reserve currency. It will take years to come for that to actually happen. So 5 to 10 years down the line. So I want to show this to you guys, because a lot of people out there are saying dollar dominance is completely dropping off, and that's not true at all, because you can see that in the past, since 2008, that the dollar has been gaining a lot of strength against other currencies. And this is where the pressure actually comes in for these other currencies to actually drop the US dollar as the world reserve currency and try to find other means in transacting. So I just want to provide you with this narrative so you can understand actually what's happening on the macro timescale. Now we are coming to a key pivotal role, because there's a lot of support confluence in this area. If we look at this, there's a bunch of support for us that can be held around these areas, and we are coming to historical levels. So is this an area, as you can see right now, because we are on the monthly time scale, is this an area where, again, the DXY will continue to basically trend upwards? And if that's the case, if it continues to trend upwards, then risk on assets are not going to do pretty well overall in the next couple of years. And if it trends downwards, if it starts to break this actual trend line, this is where you're going to see hell break loose in regards to the US dollar. Now, if we go back on the daily and we just look at this real quick, the DXY has broken off. And that's why a Bitcoin hasn't been doing too well. So you can see that on the lower time frames, we started putting these higher highs and higher lows. And we're continuing that uptrend off of that support structure, which is looking pretty strong overall for the DXY. It seems that Bitcoin is continuing to tank. Bitcoin was in this consolidation zone. We broke below that consolidation zone due to the fact that the DXY is actually gaining strength. Now, I do have a trade in place and my stop loss is set just below around $24,000. If we were to come down, we have a lot of support structure here for us in the daily time frame. Let's just go and take a look at Pulsechain and talk about 1.59 billion being burned so far. Now, in Pulsechain and Pulsex not doing so well when being hit against Bitcoin overall, when comparing it against the Bitcoin dominance. And we talked about this on the macro picture. A lot of these altcoins are not going to do so well if Bitcoin does take a big hit and if DXY gains in strength. So you have to keep an eye on the macro picture because it does play a key role. Look, these things on Pulsechain are great. You can do DeFi, you can do liquidity pools, you can do farming. It has a burning mechanism. These are great aspects, but however, it's not different than any other altcoin or other layer. So we can see that the bridge is continuing to function, work correctly. We also covered that Pulsechain has been listed on OKX. Maybe that could be a sign where this is the top for Pulsechain. So these are key things that you have to keep in mind, that we've seen sometimes even exchange listings are not so well for the overall underlying crypto asset. We see sometimes that gives us a sign that the top is reaching overall. And this is sad to see because we're only 2x where Pulsechain since the sacrifice phase 2 years ago. So you're only up 1.84x at the moment if you haven't actually contributed and you started playing with the environment, overall farming, doing all these cool things and getting that incentive token. If you're just holding, it's not spelling too well for you, waiting 2 years only to 2x your money. Now, depending on what you invested, look, 2x can be a lot of money, but if you invested a small amount and waiting 2 years, you could have been playing around with that capital somewhere else and maybe maximize your gains overall. So that's basically what's happening there. Let's quickly just talk about Zen. We're continuing to see, again, XDoge, Zen Doge not do so well. We drop below this critical support structure that we see here. And now this, if we're to come back above it, it's going to act as resistance because, look, there's a lot of resistance in this area. And if we can't turn it into support, I think this is not going to do too well overall because it doesn't have any user case other than just actually burning your Zen to get a X1 allocation. So there has to be some user utility, especially when these new coins come out on Zen. Otherwise, they won't do so well, especially if Zen is taking a big hit when Bitcoin is not doing too well. We're seeing that, again, we need to hold these critical areas that we've been discussing on this channel. You know, we have that last line of support, but if that breaks off, you know, you're just retracing 100% of that complete move that we made around March. So anyways, I'll leave you off with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let's help the algorithm, spread this channel out there. Until next time, bros, as always, stay profitable.